Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about the film Sicario. Sicario, in some ways, isn't that different of a plot. It isn't that different of an idea, but the way it's done is almost like expertly done filmmaking that you often see fail. I think I usually see someone try to combine more of an arty, existential dread vibe with an action movie, and honestly, most of the time, those are movies I don't particularly like, especially someone who doesn't really know how to do an action film. And Denis Villeneuve, who formerly I'd seen do Prisoners and Enemy, neither films I really liked, really understood how to become a much more fine-tuned filmmaker for a film like this. Action movies need fine-tuned filmmakers. They need filmmakers who know exactly what they're doing. And Sicario not only does that and does a pretty general action movie kind of a plot, but knows how to use that to really say something about America's involvement with Mexico and the war on drugs in general. In fact, it's almost, I'd say, kind of genius the way it uses these kind of genre norms to actually say something. You can almost just file this under just a simple, nicely directed genre pick and not really think of it saying anything. And I think that's really the smart thing about Sicario, is how it does a lot with just fine craftsmanship and really ends up saying more things as an auteur. It's almost like auteur craftsmanship in a way from a director I really never thought could do something like this. This is probably one of my bigger surprises I've seen this year, because I left really liking this movie, really liking kind of a fine-tuned action thriller from somebody who I honestly didn't think could ever deliver one, by making a film that not only does some interesting things with his genre, but is also saying something interesting politically, making the whole war on drugs and our involvement with Mexico feel incredibly existential and pointless. The plot of Sicario is really something you've seen a million times before. At the border between the United States and Mexico, and as the cartels are making their way further into America, the film opens up on them discovering a house in Arizona. There's all these dead bodies that are resting within the walls of the house, and it's a cartel house from Mexico, and they're seeing how far this is reaching in and how she really needs to do something. This FBI agent, Kate Macer, played by Emily Blunt, and she is enlisted by a government official played by Josh Brolin to help with this joint task force to kind of track down a drug lord. And she kind of sees how morally corrupt and morally bankrupt, but also how morally it doesn't really make any sense involvement in all of this is. And you could say, yeah, I saw that in Training Day, yeah, I've seen that a million times. And in certain ways, Emily Blunt's character is kind of like the typical audience conduit. The person in the movie goes, oh, well, see, this is why this thing is, and I'm just going to tell you, which is seemingly a natural first day on the job kind of thing, but it also takes care of exposition. They don't really do that ever. There's never a scene like that, but that's still her character. Since a lot of times they aren't telling her what she keeps saying, what's my objective, or I walk. They kind of have to tell her what the objective is, but it's almost like they don't know. It's like she's this lost character, isn't being told what's going on, and that's the kind of moral conundrum of the whole thing. It's actually kind of saying something about our morals with the war on drugs and morals in general when dealing with these kind of involvements and these kind of deals in Mexico with the cartels, which is interesting. It's interesting how they used a specific kind of genre type of film with Sicario, and this idealistic rookie who wants to change things. She wants to get revenge on what happened in that Arizona house. You'll never truly feel redeemed. You'll never really make a difference because things are so morally out of hand. There isn't really a good side, there isn't really a bad side, but there's a lot of bad going on. And it kind of adds to the fact that we're in this never-ending war on drugs and no one really knows how to get their way out of it. It feels like you're falling down a hole in a lot of this movie, and you kind of think you're climbing your way out, but you're just settling for being in the middle and not being able to figure shit out at all. It's interesting because so much of the movies I grew up with, the action movies, were about catching drug dealers and how the war on drugs was like a good thing and we were making progress and these guys were evil. And Sicario is just like, no, we are so beyond fucked. We don't really know what we're doing. What Sicario is doing with it makes it so less black and white that you're like, what is a good way to do it? Makes the dread of this film make sense and have a thematic dramatic reason. In Prisoners, it almost felt like self-serious. In Sicario, it feels like he's not being self-serious. There's just so much violence and seriousness in here, it feels honestly appropriate. I don't know if it's a perfect movie, but it's just such a step up. I think I'm kind of more surprised by it. If this was a director who had done several great movies, maybe I'd be a little more critical of it. There are certain plot lines. There's a plot line with like this cop in Mexico who you're not exactly sure where that's going. That doesn't seem connected to anything going on, and when it does connect, it kind of makes sense. It gives it more of a stakes to it. It gives it more of a human side to it. It's very obviously doing that, but it actually didn't annoy me. I can understand if someone would get annoyed by that. It's just so expertly made, and this is actually shot by Roger Deakins, who's by many considered to be probably the greatest cinematographer working today. I had seen what he did with Prisoners and some of the stuff he's done recently. I haven't really been as into. In fact, I haven't really liked the film he shot as much as something like Skyfall, which I think was the last film he shot that the cinematography was truly great. And I think Sicario is the best film he's made since that, in terms of just cinematography. I'm not talking about the films, although that might actually be true also. But with Sicario, he not only makes scenes that other DPs can never really get to make beautiful and interesting, but also makes certain sequences, even like night vision stuff, look amazing. The framing he does says more about what's going on in the scene than the script probably ordinarily would do. What Roger Deakins adds to this is he adds a master storyteller level to this script that I don't think even the best directors could achieve. There's so many shots that I wish they could have just stayed on because they're just so exquisitely done. His framing is excellent. His use of color is excellent. What he's saying in the scene, just frankly with shadows, is so far beyond almost what anybody I've seen this year do. It's just so amazingly well shot, and it's the kind of film that you see these yellows and you see this washed out thing that you're like, oh, I know what this is going to be, and we're going to see some shaky cam. There's no shaky cam in this, thankfully, and he actually makes the washout vibe work with kind of the theme of the movie. I think the thing with doing all these things and doing all these cliches, and something that Sicario really shows you, is that if you're going to do them, like, have a reason for doing them. If you're just going to do them, it's a little boring. And Sicario gives you a reason for all that, not just because of where it takes place, because what it's saying. It couldn't be bright and colorful because it's not a fantasy, obviously. It's grim and realistic. I think one of the things that this film will be criticized for is it certainly kind of demonizes Mexico. All the things that are depicted in this movie I've read happening, so I'm not going to act like they go to the extremes and do things that aren't necessarily realistic. All the things are true. Do they go a little far with it? Yeah, sure. But they're also, you know, going through parts where the cartels are, which are naturally, you know, dangerous. So I think with Sicario, I do think, yeah, it does go a little bit far, but that's the kind of world they're in, so you kind of can't go, why would they go to the nice parts of Mexico where there aren't drugs and drug dealers, because that's the part they're going in. When you think of it more logically and such, I don't think it really has a counterpoint, but I don't know if that counterpoint would have actually worked in the movie. I do think they went a little too far with it sometimes, but I think they do it in a way that kind of shows the plight that's actually having on the Mexican people. It's not just saying like all Mexicans are bad and evil and things like that. I don't think this film is saying that at all. I think it's just saying like what the drugs has done to Mexico, not saying all Mexicans are crazy and on cocaine and shooting people. Now there is a scene on the border that's a very intense scene where suddenly they see all these guys with guns trying to shoot them, and it's probably one of the better sequences in the film. That was very amazingly scary and very tense and very well done. There's a lot of sequences in this film that a lot of other directors, had they done them, they would have had to, again, probably use shaky cam, probably try to over intensify it, and it's almost like they precisely knew how to do things. That's really the fine filmmaking in this. I'm almost shocked because I really didn't like Prisoners, and I almost didn't see this movie because of Prisoners. I was just putting it off. I was like, I don't know, I just don't want to go down this road again. I hear it's good, so I'll do it, and I'm glad I did it. I like fine-tunedness to my action films. I don't like shaky cam, which is a reason to make something exciting more exciting. This film didn't need to be any more exciting, and by doing that, it made it more tense and feel scarier and more thrilling than really a regular action kind of thriller could honestly do, which is something that I really loved about this. But it feels like kind of like just a normal script. It doesn't feel like that different, but it's almost like how much meaning they attach to it and what they do with the direction, really, that makes it so special. But also also, you know, you have some amazing performances by Benicio del Toro. Hasn't been this good in years. He is spooky, he is scary. You don't exactly know what his deal is, and his aura of mystery is played up in such a way. He's really kind of the cool, mysterious gunslinger in this movie. Benicio del Toro is such a smart actor, but also an intense, quiet actor. He's squinting almost and he's mumbling, but it works with kind of his scary, mysterious kind of lone gunman type of vibe. And then Josh Brolin, who also, he's another one who I haven't seen be this good in a while, and he does kind of have that dad, family man quality to him, but he very much works in that kind of suit way. He feels like that adult that you can't exactly understand how his world works. He almost feels like he's talking down to you at some times. And then Emily Blunt, when I was watching this, I was thinking like, wow, Emily Blunt has probably one of the more interesting filmographies of any actor working today, because you go from just last year to this year, you think, oh, we have Edge of Tomorrow, and then we have Into the Woods, and then we have something like this, which are three films that are absolutely not alike at all. And the fact that she can do all of them at kind of this expert, kind of almost old school Hollywood actress vibe, but also kind of a method acting vibe. She's one of the few actresses who's fairly incredibly versatile. She knew how to play this really well. Supposedly the studio wanted to change this into a man, but I think she's feminine and she doesn't feel like just kind of that super heroine type of role. She feels very real in her idealism, but it's almost interesting seeing that crushed. Through her performance, you really do see like her losing that idealism and losing the idea that she could really do much of anything. This is definitely a film that was made probably as the war on drugs has gone on for something like 20-30 years, and seeing the costs of what it has done, the allegiances we've made, and her character, just understanding the reality of all that is very much the audience conduit, the moral of the film, and some of the audience can look to, but it also shows like there isn't like a right or wrong side, which I think is an interesting idea to it. And she plays that very well. It's almost understated, and you can almost forget about her and think about Del Toro, but I think what she does in this film is so important for this film to work. It is kind of the performance you'd expect like in Ethan Hawke in Training Day to play, like more of a guy role, and she does it expertly well. I think she does it probably better than anyone, because she has to react to all this terrible stuff going on and seeing the reality of all these things with the cartels. It was such a well-made action film. I'm honestly surprised I liked it as much as I did, and it's going to be a film that I kind of want to watch it again, because there's a lot going on in this film, and it's saying a lot of interesting things about the war on drugs and about the cartels and about the American government's involvement in things like this, but also about this genre and the interesting things you can do about a genre you thought was played out and can only say a certain thing. It's interesting when people take a particular framework and go, well, what if it also said this? It works perfectly with this. What you're saying with Training Day and what you're saying with Sicario. Sicario is the much more morally complicated, and a film that can understand those complications very well. And part of that is because of the amazing cinematography of Roger Deakins, who once again showed me why people have so much faith in him, show me why he's such an amazing DP and what he can really say with that, and how he can make sequences that other people would just kind of do more simply, make them look amazingly, immaculately done, but at the same time saying so much about what the film needs to say. It renewed my interest in a filmmaker that I didn't give a shit about, which was, it made me kind of believe in a Hollywood action thriller, which I don't think I've seen one this good in a while. It was really an eye-opening, kind of fun moment at the movies that kind of made me believe that we could have all these complications, make an adult film, and could also, frankly, be audience-friendly all at the same time. Sicario is a really great action thriller at a time that's not really known for really great action thrillers, and does it in a way that uses all those action thrillerness to make an awesome movie and push it in a new direction. And I think that's an awesome thing for an action thriller to do nowadays. I like cheesy stuff. I like stuff when you expect it, and that's the other thing about this film. A lot of times things are quiet, things are normal, people are talking, people are taking a shower, it's being very kind of normal, and then when an action sequence happens and there's violence and blood, it hits you, it's scary, it gives you the full impact of violence. I've heard this director doesn't actually like violence, and I could honestly see that, because he doesn't make violence look fun at all. It's almost like he studied action movies, but he still doesn't like the violence of them. It's a very interesting film. It's a thought-provoking film, but it's also a film you'll leave and like, that was a good movie. Not just as someone who just enjoys film and sees all different kinds of films, but I think this is very much a mainstream audience film that will make mainstream audiences go, what the fuck was was that. That was cool, and that was thrilling, and that was gripping, and you almost feel like you went through something, but not in a way that's too far to get into. It feels like something you can get into and speak to you and understand, but also has all these complexities and fine filmmaking and everything like that. So if you have seen Sicario and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to.